Hello everyone, it is time for our weekly live stream. I am tardy. I am so sorry. I struggled with all the electronics. Nothing wanted to cooperate today. Hi Elmer, you are first. You beat everyone. Good job. So behind me, I didn't even change the colors. The reef tank has turned 9 years old, and that happened on November 10th. So I thought I would share with you the things that I bought in the last year that went into this tank, and then we'll talk about the tank itself and kind of give you, I don't know, a virtual tour of what's going on. Like I said, I wanted to do something. I did film some of the tank for you to see as well, so we'll get some nice footage. But I just wanted to kind of get this thing started, and nothing was working right, and the lighting wasn't working right, and the computer wouldn't work right, and wouldn't talk to the camera. The camera didn't like the firmware. The firmware was like isn't compatible with this camera. So we are gonna make this work no matter how hard we try. So first of all, I would like to commend you for being here. I do appreciate that. And yeah, so if we go all the way back to 2010, I had a dream, which was this tank behind me. And I spent 7 months building the room behind myself right now. This is actually a section of my garage that I stole an area. And it used to be a different room before that. So it used to be a smaller room behind a 280-gallon reef. Then when that tank leaked and I took it down, I built this new room for the bigger tank, which is the 400. And then after, it got set up and it was going great and it was beautiful. And then at 13 months, it sprung a leak. And the process of getting the tank repaired / replaced was an ordeal. And it took 18 months. And finally, after 18 months of waiting, this tank you're looking at right now is the one that went up on November 10th, 2013. So in the meantime, you guys have, if you've been on this channel for a while, you've seen it go through some things. And for the most part, it's done really well. I mean, there's occasional hiccup, but nothing has been a major catastrophe other than what happened a year ago. Other than that, everything went really, really well with the tank. And it's just been an ongoing thing where it just grows and gets full. And then I fly my friend Dwayne out here to help me tear out corals. And I basically reset the tank. And we've reset it twice already in 9 years. So every 3 to 4 years, we attack the tank, take out a bunch of coral, and then a bunch of coral skeleton beneath it, get that all out of the tank, kind of check on the structure of the rock work, and clean the sand bed, and then go ahead and put the corals back in, and then wait for it to grow in. So we did that a year ago. In September of 2021, Dwayne was here. We did some big water changes. We really cleaned the sand bed. We got the nitrates down, and they continued to drop down lower and lower, and I was really happy about that. And then, in the meantime, my nitrates are back up again. So everything is a roller coaster in this hobby, and I just want you to be aware of that because that is kind of the way things are. Now, I do want to go ahead and show you some of the things that I acquired in the last year. But let me ask you this. Do you want to see pictures or do you want to see video? Because you have a choice of seeing the video I just edited, or you can go ahead and see the picture. So what is your choice? Now somebody is saying, any champagne today, a Crown Royal? Actually, I have a Shiner Bock right here in a Milo's Reef glass. So I decided to pour myself a quick drink because I was stressed. So that's to 9 years, and let's hope we get another 9 without any issues. All right, let's see. No one said an opinion yet. So, hey, Mike says, first time using a Peacemaker today. Yes, I do recommend putting a fish in there for 3 days. Let's talk about the Achilles Tang for a moment. Let me go ahead and throw that on the screen. So, the Achilles, right there, is my newest addition to the tank. And I put it inside the Peacemaker after I put it through safety stop. So the fish store I got it from was Salgado Aquatics, which is out of Plano, Texas. And they came to the frag swap. They set up an aquarium filled with fish at the frag swap, and I saw 3 Achilles for sale. And I said, man, they look really pretty. I want the smallest one. So that is the one that you're seeing in that picture. And if we look around, you may see the Achilles make an appearance from time to time. Tends to hang out on this side of the tank and kind of under that rock where that anthias is right now. So just kind of keep your eyes open. You may see it swim by. Now, I put the Achilles in the first part of safety stop, and within 15 minutes, something was wrong. The fish was nose down. It was kind of tumbling over, And there's an air stone in there. There's a heater in there. It's only a 45-minute bath, and I've never, ever seen a fish not do well in safety stop. And so, of course, I panicked. I mean, I just saw it, and I thought, there's no way this fish is going to survive 45 minutes of this. So I immediately scooped him out of that the first bath, which is formalin, and I put it inside a bucket of clean water from the reef. And then after a minute, and I had already added the air stone. After a minute, I went ahead and put in methylene blue, which is part 2 of safety stop, which purportedly doubles the oxygenation level to 200%. And I felt, okay, if anything, that'll help. And within a few minutes, the tang had leveled out again and seemed to be fine, and it went through the entire bath. I was like, okay. So then, I didn't really get the full treatment I like to do with any new fish. But I thought, all right, well, I mean, can't guarantee every fish is going to like this bath. But that is the only fish I've ever seen struggle in safety stop, and I've been using it for 12 years. So, it was weird. So I put it inside the peacemaker, and it seemed okay. And I looked at all the fish, and no one seemed to care. And I thought, all right, you're good. And then a little while later, that evening, I went ahead and I squirted in some food into the peacemaker for it to eat before I fed the reef, and it went nuts. It just was spazzing out in that box. It was just slamming itself everywhere, and I was really worried for that fish. But I thought maybe with all your crazy antics, you'll eat some of the food you're kicking up and keeping in suspension, and I fed the reef. And when I do that, I turn off the return pump. And, I didn't keep staring at the fish. I kind of watched everything, and then, that was that. 10 minutes later, I'm looking over at the tank, and the return pump is turning on. And when it does that, it pushes air out of these nozzles behind me into the reef for 20 seconds or less. And the Achilles is going nuts again. And I'm like, this is not a good sign. And I thought, okay, that's it for the day. The lights are turning off soon. We'll see how it does in the morning. So the next morning, I looked at the Achilles. It seemed okay. Maybe picking at the bottom of the box like it was trying to swim downward but could not and wouldn't give up trying. And I thought, well, that's okay. Just got a couple more days. You'll be all right. And that afternoon, I was watching, and it seemed to be going a little bit crazy in the box again. And I was thinking, well, what fish is below it that it's irritated? Does it hate pajama cardinal fish? What is going on that's causing this fish to just be so bonkers? And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to have to make an executive decision and just set this fish free now, because I don't think it's going to survive 3 days in the box. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it is not happy. And I know that Achilles Tangs will pace. And, they like to swim really hard. But, I mean, I know how these work at wholesalers. They put in little tiny cubbies, and then the wholesalers scoop them out, and they put them in bags, and they ship them to the stores, and the stores have them in a small tank. And we walk in, and we buy this fish, and it's in a small bag. But this fish was not happy. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the reef. And I did. I put it into the reef. It immediately swam down. It went and investigated everything, and no one seemed to care. And I thought, okay, well, that's a good sign. And then after a while, it just, lights were out again. And so the next day I'm looking at this fish, I'm looking for the Achilles, can't find it. And it's hiding under the rockwork at the end of the tank here, just against the wall. And I thought, all right, well, maybe it's early. Maybe it's not in the mood to swim yet. Everything else was out and about. I'll just kind of keep an eye on it that day. And as I watched that fish, I noticed that it would kind of come out a little bit. And then the coal tang, which is the most friendly tang on the planet as far as I'm concerned, never cares about anything but eating, was chasing the Achilles. And I thought, what is going on? Why are you being mean to the Achilles Tang? So I went ahead and I, just kind of observed. I mean, I'm not going to put my hand in the tank and try to put my hand between them. I mean, they got to work it out. This is their home. They got to live together. And as I'm watching, the Achilles takes off into the rockwork, and then the coal goes after it, and then the coal goes off to snack on some food, and, swim around and peck at the glass, peck at the rocks. Looking for the Achilles again, but, the Achilles is in that spot behind the rockwork. I'm like, all right. And then later I'm looking, and the yellow tang is chasing the Achilles. And I thought, oh, see, this is exactly why I want new fish in a box for 3 days. Because when a new fish is stressed, it releases a pheromone into the water column that basically tells all the other fish, attack me. I don't know why this is a thing, but it's super annoying. So if it could be in the box for 3 days and be super chill, you just pour it in the reef, no one's upset. No one smells pheromones. All is well in the reef world. But this fish was freaking out in the box and was releasing this stuff into the water column clearly. And the coal picked up on it, the yellow picked up on it. The Spock didn't care at all. She did not care at all about that fish, ignored it. The Anthias kind of observed it. The skunks, they're always doing something. So, I mean, that could have been territorial stuff. But specifically, the coal was the big aggressor, the yellow tang a little bit less. And, but not enough to, freak me out or think I need to remove the fish from the reef. And then after waiting another, I don't know, I guess it was the next day, I'm taking pictures of the tang and I'm taking, pictures of other fish too. And I noticed that the Achilles has a slice on its stomach. And, that came from one of the other tangs. And I was like, well, I'm not really surprised, but I know you can heal from it. And I mean, it was only visible because I zoomed in with the macro lens. If you didn't, it wasn't really obvious to the eye. So, in the meantime, all the aggression has stopped. And I've even watched the Achilles swim up to the coal and say, I'm right here and I'm not leaving. And the coal is like, all right, let me pick, turn toward you, peck some more. And I was like, all right, that seems okay. And the yellow, kind of just does its thing, but again, not aggressive. So I think it's going to be fine. So we're just going to have to watch and see if this fish shows up or not. Fingers crossed. You just never know what's going to happen. But this is a fish I've wanted for a super long time. I think when I first saw it, I was probably on Reef Central back in the early 2000s, and it was probably in someone's reef tank, maybe tank of the month, maybe just a build thread. And I was like, that is a beautiful tang. I totally want that tang, but I had 6 in a 280 gallon, and I said, I can't get another fish. I can't get another tang. There's no way. Plus, I had a powder blue, and the powder blue, the powder brown, and the Achilles all kind of had the same shape of a fish, so they would definitely fight. You can't put Acanthurus with other Acanthurus in this scenario. It just doesn't work out well. So I never got it. And it was one of those fish I always wish I had. And then when the purple tang died last year, which I think happened before the 8th anniversary of the tank. So I don't believe that happened during the last 12 months. We're talking about the 9th anniversary of this reef tank. So it wasn't included in this topic, but I think it died prior to that. And so I've been down to 3 tangs for the last year, and I knew that the Achilles did not match the shape of the yellow, the coal, or the Nassau. And so I felt it would be a safe choice to put in the tank. And so like I said, we'll just keep an eye out for it, and we'll see if it swims out into the open, where it is. Oh, there it is. It's hiding the rock. You know what? I got these bright lights right now. No wonder. Let me go ahead and change the color of the tank because I'm not a super fan of the way it looks right now. I'd use my phone, but my phone is my camera. So we'll go into Fusion. I'll change this to streaming. There you go. That looks sort of natural. Okay, we'll close that again. Let's just close Chrome entirely because I don't like the way it sucks up all the RAM on this computer. All right. So now you got a normal looking reef. And like I said, the Achilles is probably going to be in that spot right in that little cave right there. Just kind of keep your eyes open. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this is a non-issue and I will have this Achilles for many years to come. Now, speaking of other fish, I've been watching Spock closely lately, and her stomach area is a little thinner. So I'm going to step up my game of putting in more nori on a daily. I'm going to try to get to doing it daily. I tend to do it like twice a week. So I'm going to try and step that up, and maybe I can get a little more food in there. Now, part of it could be because she only has one good eye, and so she's missing half the food. I don't know. I've noticed when I put in food with big chunks, very often she does not get the big chunks. She's eating all the little mysis stuff, which is not enough filler for that size tang. And by the way, I did get a picture of, or a video of Spock with the Achilles underneath it. It is so tiny by comparison. It's super adorable. I love it. All right. So now I want to share with you guys some stuff. So I think what we'll do now is we'll do a video. So let me, whoops, that was the wrong thing. We're going to choose a video. And here we go. So I'll be the narrator. And this was the reef tank on the November 10th. So it was near, not lights out, but near feeding time when the tank was in the blue hue. I did use a filter on my iPhone to kind of block out some of the blue. And I had to go out, as you'll notice as you keep watching the footage, less reflections as I turned more things off in the room so you could appreciate the reef itself and not be distracted by stuff. But the tank is doing really, really well. And I'm very happy with the coral growth. But at this point, there's too much coral growth, and I have to go in and start removing things to create space so that harmony continues and things don't just kill each other. Because that's what happens. As corals get bigger, they sting their neighbors to get space, and they smother and kill other things. Like, for example, I noticed my frog spawn, I have 2 little polyps, and one polyp was completely engulfed by a hammer coral last night, and I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So I need to move the frog spawn a little bit away to give it a fighting chance if it's going to grow into anything a bit larger. Now, in the tank, the oldest coral in there right now is probably the Blue Ridge coral, which is to the right of the green slimer. That bumpy looking thing. I've had it probably since 2003. Other corals have been in the tank for a super long time, be the tongue coral and the lobos. That right there is the lithophyllon, and I've probably been growing that for 12 or 13 years from a single tiny frag. And lots of good SPS growth in the last year. Remember, a year ago, there was a lot of stone visible with little frags on it. And it's taken 12 months for things to really grow in and grow nicely. Now, during the last 12 months, not much has changed. I do sporadic water changes, and I clean the skimmer from time to time, and I run a calcium reactor 24 hours a day, and I dose magnesium pretty much daily, where I put in 90 milliliters of magnesium a day. And during the summer, I did a whole bunch of ICP testing, and I dosed a lot of trace elements, specific trace elements, to fill in what was lacking. And I think that really helped with the coloration of the corals and the growth. So I'm very happy with that. And I can talk more about that a little bit later. But this right here just kind of gives you a nice close-up of what's in my backdrop behind me when I'm speaking. And I know some of you are like, well, I need you to stand in front of the tank, but even when I do, you don't see this. So I wanted to really film up close. There was a chalice we passed a second ago that's half green, half white. I need to dip it in Maricin 1 and 2 or A and B, and I don't even own that. But apparently if I do that, that chalice will heal up completely, I've been told. There is the Shadowcaster, which doesn't look nearly as compelling as it did in the past. It used to be much thicker, and probably because it was near a lot more flow. So it's been growing a little more spindly this year. But now the green slimer is growing very densely. There's Spock right there being a camera hog. And so this is a really nice view. One of the things I did not do when I was filming was film the tank from above. So I definitely want to get some footage, and then I'll release this as a separate video with some music to where you guys can see it. Now, the reason there's a big white light kind of on the sand bed there is that's the light that's lighting the anemones and the clownfish while they're waiting for their new tank to be set up, which was also supposed to be 9 years old, but I took it down 6 or 7 months ago to replace the floors and paint the walls, and it still hasn't been set up to this day. So hopefully I'll get to that in the coming weeks or months. Green coral bottom right, it was probably the Montipora. I'm sorry, I just saw it now. I might be a little bit lagging behind what you're seeing. It could have been the Frammer, which is a coral that looks like a hammer and a frog spawn. There's my new Elegance coral that I got about 6 months ago. It's got blue tips. It's really pretty. And you'll see a lot of these stupid little anemones snuck in here, and I've got to go in and remove them all. And I wanted to film the tank the way it was, not after I fixed it. So in the coming week or two, I will be going in there and start removing all these little tiny bubble tip anemones, get them out, kind of, and I'll see what kind of damage they've caused because they stung everything they're touching. So there'll be big swatches of white in there, I'm sure, when I pluck those guys out. But that will also allow the corals to grow more because it won't have all these tentacles stinging them on a daily basis. The tank itself, I'm very happy with it. There's nothing really to complain about, to be honest. And I know so oftentimes we look for things to fixate on and freak out about. And like I said, my big problem right now is things are too big and they're all touching each other. That's a chalice right there. And it's got blue mouths, which you only see occasionally, which is really, really cool. And that green thing right there is a big old bird's nest. There's an acropora in front of it that I got from Dwayne that was way smaller when I got it. Here are the clownfish and anemones all tucked into a very small acrylic tank I made years ago that was sitting here unused. And so I put them in there for a temporary tank. And it's been temporarily running for like 7 months, which is a horrible thing. I'm not a terrible person. But The new tank is here, so it's just a matter of me painting the cabinets where the tank will go, build the stand, and then move all this livestock into that cube and get that operational once more. I'm still debating what I'm going to do about lighting, if I'll use the Gen 4 Radeon or if I'll switch to something different. But, and it'll be really nice to get that temporary tank out of the way because I cannot get to the algae turf scrubber. It's hard to get to the skimmer. I can't clean my sump. So I need that thing out of the way. I need it gone. I need to get the tank back up where it belongs so we can all enjoy it the way it is. And I'll do a video about the setting up of that tank, so that'll be something new for you to look forward to as well. And then here's the tank, no filter at all. This is my view at 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night. Super blue, but it actually looked visible. I was like, oh, that works. All right, let's switch back to my camera. So I hope you enjoyed that. And well, it's kind of cool, right? All right, so let's talk about some things I added to the tank in the past year. How can I do this in a nice, easy way? I watched this tutorial and I thought, oh, I got to do these things. And of course, I didn't do them. So you saw the Achilles already. Sorry. Why would I show you that twice? Okay, so this coral was added this year. And I'm going to leave it big for a moment. I want you to see how the polyps are half blue and half green. This is a Montipora. And when I saw the polyps, I said, oh my God, I need to own this thing. So I went ahead and I put that in my reef, and it has puddled out completely all over the rock nearby. It's doing really well. I think it's just a completely encrusting coral. I don't think it's going to do anything interesting like big branches of any kind. But it's really pretty, and I'm very glad I got it. The next thing I want to show you. This was my acan patch last year. Beautiful, gorgeous. However, I have lost some of those to the big chalice that is in this spot right here. And it's just been devastating some of my acans. It's really unfortunate. And it's partly my fault because I didn't cut that chalice. I kept knowing I needed to do it and never got my arm wet. So in a way, it's, you know, I mean, it's totally my fault for letting life happen, okay? I mean, that's the way it is. But these orange ones are so pretty and they're gone. The greenish ones, I've got like half of them, and then everything behind it, they're okay. And there's my brand new Alveopora that I got within the last 12 months as well. All right. Then here is the Alveopora when I first got it. Hiding behind the acans. So it's actually tripled in size since then. And it's nice, but I couldn't find a current picture, which means the picture's on my phone and not on my computer. But I just wanted to show you those because I like Alveopora, and I hadn't had those in probably 15 years. This coral here, I got at Aquashella last fall, so it's still within the last 12 months. And it's grown into quite a coral in comparison. It's a little colony back there, right behind that pink-looking one. And you can see my rock was really reddish back then. And that red is gone. I mean, yeah, there's corals all over it, but the red is gone. The belief was that this red turf algae was occurring because of the dosing of potassium. Because I put in so much potassium for what was lacking that it just aggressively grew on the rock. But then I stopped dosing it when I hit my right number. And then, you know, the tangs were gnawing on it. And then eventually it was gone. So if you see something in your tank you don't like, just think, how will it look 12 weeks from now? And I know that's a really hard thing to accept, but there are things that go through phases. So if you see something that you don't like and you're worried about it, there's, you know, obviously you can act on it. You can, look how white the tank is behind this coral. You can act on it. You can do something about it if it's something you can correct. But a lot of times we need to kind of also give it time to recover, to get back to normal. So if you have a coral that suddenly looks ill like I did, and I had a lot of them that looked really ill a year ago, dosing the potassium brought the number back up, and then over the next 8 to 12 weeks, those corals recovered. And it was a waiting game. It's not something where you can just flip the switch and it looks perfect again. And, you know, sometimes you can just wait for something to burn itself out. Like it will grow and grow and grow. And I'm not talking about hair algae, okay? Don't misread my words here. When you have green hair algae growing, it will spread everywhere and it will not burn itself out. It will never burn itself out. But there are certain things that can. Sometimes cyanobacteria can hit a tipping point and it can fade. But that's a super long wait, and most people, including myself, won't do that. I will treat the tank to get rid of the cyanobacteria entirely so I can have a nice pretty aquarium within 5 days. But this red stuff, it was not something I could easily remove. There was corals all over it, and I just waited it out. I let the urchins I added, which, by the way, I did get urchins in the last year. So let's put them on the screen. These right here, I got them. They were the size of a grape. So that right there is the mouth. And I'm trying to remember. I think someone said the mouth is called Aristotle's lantern. I might have that correct. I'm not 100% sure because I heard it like 6 months ago. I was like, that's weird. But those teeth, they just carve away at stuff. So if you have an acrylic tank and you put in tuxedo urchins or any urchins that have those teeth, it could leave bite marks on the acrylic viewing panel. So if you have an acrylic tank, do not rely on urchins to clean the front. They can clean the rock, they can clean, sand and stuff. But if you see them on the overflow box, you may see bite marks on there. If you see them on the front or the side walls, it could leave etchings that you're going to polish out later. So it's much better to not have urchins in an acrylic tank, or make sure that as soon as you see one wandering away from where it belongs, you put it back in the middle of the rockwork somewhere away from your front panel and hopefully avoid any damage to your tank. But I did get these tiny urchins. They were super adorable. So that was a close-up of the mouth I wanted you to see. And this is actually one that's full size. There's Spock right there. And it was on the glass. And I kind of like the shape of what this urchin does. It's kind of funny how it almost looks sort of like a, what is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 pointed star? I mean, I don't know. It's weird, right? Most urchins, you think of them like a ball with some needles sticking off. It does that all the time. So I think that is specific to this one, probably because of the blue sections between the needles. But I had put in 11 of these urchins. I'm sorry, I put my hand right here. You can see 11 urchins about this big, like the size of a big blueberry. And then over the next 3 to 4 months, they grew to adult size. And I keep trying to do a head count. I know I lost one for sure because one day I found an empty shell that was an urchin. And so I thought I had 10. Well, I was counting a couple days ago. I only got to 9. That doesn't mean there wasn't a 10th one hiding somewhere or under the hammers or something or in the rockwork. But so far, I still have them all, as far as I know. So they were purchased. Actually, they were purchased in January of this year. So they're not even a year old. I also picked up this mandarin this year. And this mandarin is a target mandarin. It's called a psychedelic mandarin fish. And I don't find it to be psychedelic at all. I feel like, I mean, typically we would look at these and call them a target mandarin fish. But the name is psychedelic. And I'm like, that makes no sense because I think the blue ones or the big ones, I think those are way more psychedelic. And so I'm really going, I'm just putting a line in the sand. I do not accept the name of this fish. But I got it from Live Aquaria, and it had the bones down the side, which means it's too thin. It wasn't getting enough food. So I've been very worried about it. And for the first few days, it didn't do anything at all but kind of sit there on the sand, which was really just a struggle for me because, as a reef keeper, you want everything to be happy. But there you can see it finally decided to go look on this rock for maybe a bug of some kind, a copepod, an amphipod, any kind of pod, and hopefully it found one or two. Anyway, it's the only mandarin in my reef, and the only other fish that could eat pods is my cleaner wrasse, and I don't see the cleaner wrasse looking at the rockwork hardly at all. It's almost always chasing fish. So, in theory, the mandarin should have a very good opportunity to find pods throughout a 400-gallon reef with whatever amount of rocks I have in here. Let's just say 300 pounds of live rock that's been around for, I've had this rock going all the way back to probably 2004, 2003, 2002. I mean, it's all the rock I own. I never throw away live rock, so I've had it for a super long time. And I've put in things like Live Rock Enhance, and I put in things like Reef Enhance. And I've put in pods from Reef Nutrition this year. I put in pods from another company. Dinkins Aquatics gave me some pods I poured in the refugium. So I constantly am putting in pods from time to time. And I've noticed that the mandarin looks a little bit thicker, but still is not a plump fish the way I'd like it to be. But it's in my reef. It was added this year. And that's the main point of this presentation. Speaking of things I bought this year, it's not in the reef, but it's a scarlet hermit crab. And I put this in Caitlin's tank, which Caitlin's tank was set up this year, but it's not part of the 400-gallon. So I don't know why I actually shared it in today's talk. I did add this thing, though. It's really pretty. So this is a mini red carpet anemone, and there are 2 in my tank, but I don't know where. There was one back here, and then there was another one over there, and now I don't see it, which means it's moved. And I'll have to keep my eyes open, and maybe I'll come across it, which would be nice. But I don't know when or where I'll see it. Maybe as I'm looking down at the reef from above, I'll spot it, because obviously it needs light. So no matter where it's hiding, it should be facing upward toward the light, in theory. But a very pretty little carpet anemone. And I only bought 1, but I ended up with 2. This is the second one. Pretty cool. And then I bought this. This is a true story. Bought this earlier this year. They called it the Master Yoda Acropora. I put it in my reef and never saw it again. So unfortunately, it must have fallen down into the rock work. If any of it's alive, it'd be a miracle. But if I come across it and I still have it and it's alive, that's good news. But it was something that was added to the tank this year. And that's part of the reef keeping thing. I mean, you do things and then you hope that it all works out. Speaking of hoping things work out, here are 2 Ignitus anthias. My friend Peter recommended I get them for the tank. He says they are absolutely beautiful. They have really pretty scales. They're just gorgeous. And after, I don't know, a week and a half, I only found 1. And now I never see either one. I think they're both gone. So that didn't work out. But I did try. So I really like lyre tails. But speaking of other anthias I like a lot, this one here, I bought this year. Gorgeous. Bimaculatus. I feel like it needs a really cool name like all other fish have, you know, the nicknames. And I think it should be called the Scribbled Anthias. Can I just officially make it that's name? Because no one's called any anthias scribbled yet. And I just feel like the patterns on this are totally scribbled. It's just so pretty. So that's the male. That's the super male. Just really pretty. And I'll leave it on the screen here. And then I'll show you its counterpart, which is the female. And you can see some of the stripe under the eye and then the color on the back. This is the female. So there you go. You've got them side by side. And so I only got the pair. Now what I could do is I could get more of the females for the male. Or I could just stick to getting more lyre tails, which I tend to have good success with lyre tails. I like them a lot. But Bimaculatus anthias are beautiful. They're more expensive too, just so you know. I mentioned that I got this elegance in the video. And as you can see, it's green. It's got these little purple or blue balls at the tip. It's so pretty. So I put it in the back of my tank, and it hasn't stung anything. It hasn't done any damage. I did ask for the smallest elegance I could find, and I was very happy with this one because it fit my tank. It wasn't, you know, the size of a football that's going to need 2 foot of space. And there's a coral to its right that's up on that frag rack thing. And they've been touching, but neither one looks damaged whatsoever, which is interesting. And let's see, I think there's one more thing I added that I bought this year. Let's see. Well, the only other thing I bought this year that we have to mention, even though it's not in this tank, is this little fish right here. So that is the Interruptus angelfish, the pygmy Japanese angelfish. And this was tank raised by my friend Karen Britton in Hawaii. And at one point she announced that she had 3 for sale. And I said, I'll take your smallest. And so she went ahead and got that to me. And it turned 1 year old in September. I actually missed its birth date. I'm very annoyed with myself. So September 7th, it turned 1 year old. So October, November, it is now 14 months old. And they tend to live, I think it was between 5 and 8 years. So we'll see how long I have it. Beautiful fish. It's very happy in its own little habitat. And that is not part of the 400 gallons, so I'm not going to get into a big thing about it. But I'm really glad after 17 years of getting this fish I've always wanted. So that is that. So those are all the things that I was able to share with you today. about the tank. Now, what else can I tell you about the maintenance of the tank itself? You know, like I said, it's been going for 9 years. What is my daily duty? My daily duty is cleaning the glass. Every single day, I got the cleaning magnet and I'm erasing the algae that grows on the glass. It never stops. It just drives me absolutely crazy. I wish it would slow down, but it doesn't. And if I don't clean it, then my tank looks hazy. It just has a hazy look, like things are blurry, like my glasses need to be cleaned. And it's the glass it needs to be cleaned. And so I clean it and everything looks 4K again. So I have to do that every single day. And sometimes I just do the front and this end because it's easy. And then I don't do the back for a couple more days. But when I erase it, it just comes off like a green, like a mist. You know, it's not like algae is coming off the glass. It just turns into dust basically, and you see it blowing around and the water's not quite as clear. And then the protein skimmer removes it. I don't run any kind of filter socks in this tank. I don't run the Clarity. I took that off a while back. And so all that this system is using for filtration is the protein skimmer. And it's got an algae turf scrubber. And it's got a refugium. But there's no other mechanical anything. There's no sponges or floss or anything to trap particulates. And it's one of the reasons why I turn off my return pump so that none of the food just goes down and lands on the bottom of the sump. Now, earlier this year, I did do some vacuuming of the sand bed. I also completely cleaned out the substrate of the refugium down below because it was filled with detritus to see if I could help lower my nitrates, which it didn't touch it at all. They still tend to stay right about 80 all the time. My phosphates are staying relatively low, which is surprising, which means I can get away with putting in more nori and not really sweating it, which is good. The lighting that this tank is enjoying is the Skies from Neptune Systems. I've been running them, I believe, 18 months now. And, you know, so everything you saw, the growth that you observed. Oh, I think I saved a picture for you guys. Where did I put it? Oh, man. Let me just find you this. Let's go back to January, see if I can find a handy picture. So here was my tank earlier this year. You can see my little Christmas tree thing to the side there. And you can see how small the twigs were and how much of the rock had that reddish stuff on it. And then I will hide it. Boom, there's a tank full of coral. So it's been a lot of change in that time. And that all happened under the skies. So if you're wondering, are these good lights to use? Yes, they are. I love them. And they don't need to be plugged into an Apex to operate. You can plug them straight into the wall, and then you can use the app or Bluetooth app to program them, and then that's that. And if you're staying in front of your tank, you're like, hey, I want the colors to be differently for my guests, you can just switch it to a different color on the spot, and boom, you have a prettier tank for them, you know, for that moment, and then you can change it back. Or you can set up profiles, and you can set up virtual switches to trigger lights for a certain duration, and then trigger them back to their normal sense. While we're doing some lighting here, you guys see it right now in streaming mode, which is what I always like to use, but I find it to be a little bit boring. So I will show you what the tank looks like if it's at 100% on all channels. Let me turn off streaming. So this is the tank at 100% on all channels. And to the eye, it looks nice. It doesn't look crazy blue, but to this camera, it definitely has a blue hue to it. Another color or mode that I got, this is from Dwayne. He calls this one evening mode. And it's rather nice and relaxing. It's definitely in the deeper blues and purples. And then if I wanted to sell coral, I would go to this mode, which I call, oh, I'm sorry, this is photos. So this is my photos mode, which kind of helps if you just want to take a picture without having to put the clip on your phone. And then finally, like I said, if I want to sell corals, I would change it to make it glow. And that's this insanity right here. But the 100% one looks really pretty to the eye, and I do like that one a lot. But this is what the mode would be right now for this time of day. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Texas time. My tank is kind of, it's less blue, it's a little bit more white, and I like this coloration, but I just feel like it's too blue on camera, which is why I usually switch the streaming mode to that all-natural look that you saw. right there. But I might modify this slightly. I might play with it and see if I can tweak it just a little bit so it can be a little bit prettier for the streams because, I mean, obviously you guys want to look at something nice. But I do know very few people are fans of pure white light. I've got a friend in California, and he posts pictures of the tank as like pure sunlight. It's so pretty. And people are like, yes, white light, because everyone's so used to seeing blue all the time. But it really is a nice look, and it's good for the corals to grow under. And I've been reading some posts from people saying how blue makes corals grow and white is just for your eyes. And that is 100% the opposite. I don't know where that came from, but people are saying it like it's fact, and it's not true at all. White light grows corals. The Earth is growing coral, I mean, the planet Earth with our oceans under the yellow sun is growing coral, okay? And we get to enjoy it. And if you dive down, yes, it gets dimmer. It's not as bright, but it's still white light that's being filtered. But it's not blue water down there. And that's the thing that's driving me crazy. People are like, it's blue down there. I'm like, no, it's not. But the blue spectrum does reach further down. That's true. But that is not the basis of why corals grow. As a matter of fact, lots of people in the past would plant frags in tanks full of blue light, and they wouldn't grow. And they said, why won't it grow? Why is it taking so long? Everything is perfect. My parameters are absolutely perfect. And we're like, give your tank some white light and watch those corals grow. And they did. And back in the early 2000s and the late 1900s, the 90s, people were growing corals under 6,500 Kelvin lights, which is like a light bulb, just like white, ugly light that, makes things look normal. But the thing is that the corals grew like crazy, but they were hard to sell because they were just brown sticks. So they learned to take these corals, they grew really fast, and they'd put them under a 20K metal halide for 2 or 3 months to color them up, and now you could sell them. And in the meantime, it has migrated to the point now where people are constantly selling everything under blue light, and they think blue light's the only way to go, and now they're telling people blue is what makes your corals grow, which is not true. So hopefully some people start listening to me again and stop telling people that blue is the way to go. Blue hides a lot of flaws. Blue helps misidentify a lot of issues. Like, for example, under blue light, people say, well, I got this black stuff in my rock work. I'm like, do you have a white flashlight? And like, oh, it's red. I'm like, it's cyanobacteria. But you see, under blue light, it does not look red. And so they can't identify what they're looking at. So white light helps you determine what's going on with your tank and what you need to work on and what is an issue. And then the blue light tends to hide all that, so you don't have to think about it as much. But it's nice to have some blue light. I enjoy blue light every single night. I even throw on the Aquashella glasses and think how insane my tank looks for a little minute or two. I take them off, I put them back under the stand, and I look at my tank the way it looks. But white lighting, there's nothing bad about it. It's not evil. It's not the bane of existence. It is not the algae growing nightmare. It does not invent dinoflagellates. All the things I'm hearing, none of it's true. All right. Yeah. Okay, I mentioned sporadic water changes. I have a 250-gallon water tank behind this aquarium for water changes that I mix up with salt. It takes about 80 pounds of salt, 88 pounds of salt to get the right salinity of 1.026, specific gravity, or 35 ppt. And with that, I will then do water changes based on what I am so inclined. I might change 80 gallons, I might change 20 gallons, I might change 200 gallons. Just depends on my mood and what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm vacuuming the sand bed, I might change 40 gallons of water because I'm fixated on cleaning sand. If I'm trying to change a lot of water in the tank, yeah, I'll change 200 gallons. If I just want to pump the water out of the sump, like out of the skimmer section of the return zone, that's about 80 gallons of water. And then I can just still have salt water left over for the next water change. So that's a nice convenience. But there's a hassle factor to filling up that container with salt. Because the container is 7 feet tall and the ceiling is 8 feet tall, I have about 9 inches of space to pour in the salt. And because of that, I don't like dealing with it. And this container behind my tank has had RODI water in it now for weeks. And I haven't grabbed the ladder and started making my trips back and forth from the garage to the top of the ladder to pour salt in that container. And I'm going to do it today because I need to do some water changes. I dose Prodibio in the tank twice a month. And like I said while we were watching the video, I dosed a lot of trace elements for a couple of months. I backed off on it a little bit. I need to kind of get back to it because I like what I was doing and, see where the ICP tests give me my results to see what's going on. One of the things I dosed the crap out of this summer was molybdenum. No, that's not true. I did that once and immediately said your number's too high. It was manganese. And I put in bottles of manganese into my tank, and it kept coming back, none detected, none detected, none detected, because the corals just absorbed it and got more colorful. So, I mean, is that a bad thing, or is that an okay thing? It's kind of funny. Hang on just one sec. I just cleaned my Neuro 5 pump on the frag tank, and now it's making grinding noises, even though I cleaned it. So I had to unplug it because they were irritating me. Speaking of things that irritate me, let's talk about all those things. Something that's irritated me for some time now, and I wish Ecotech would fix it, is the tubing that goes over the rollers. That needs to have a longer longevity than what it is. And I love the pump. It's very quiet, but it slows down, and I have to replace that tubing. And I have to replace that tubing pretty much every 10 to 12 weeks. I'd say 10 weeks. If I go any longer, the flow rate is so slow that it's not producing what I need. It's not providing the right amount of liquid because that tubing doesn't last. All the rest of the tubing everywhere doesn't matter. It's the part that goes over the rollers, and that stuff doesn't last long enough, and it's super irritating to me that I have to keep replacing that. It's one of the reasons why I took off the Clarisea. I didn't like that to keep changing the roller. And people are like, well, yeah, but that's better than socks. Well, I never was a sock guy. So for me, I'm buying toilet paper for my tank and I have to change these rollers out as quickly as they get consumed. And it's one of those things that makes me think of a subscription-based model. And we have enough of that. We have too many of those as it is. And I didn't like feeding that, okay? So I was like, yeah, I'm done with that. I don't need it. If I want to run a sock, I'll stick a 7-inch sock on the drain. I'll rearrange my valves to make all the water go right into that sock. I'll get super clear water, and then that's it. I can take the sock out and be done for a week, a month, whatever, until I feel like it. And I really rarely run socks, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And it's, like I said, I'm doing a deep cleaning, so I catch things. But I really would like the Versa pump, getting back to my first complaint, that tubing lasts longer. It needs to be a different kind of tubing. And I need that to be improved. I need them to find something that is better than whatever it is they're giving us. Now, that could be a piece of silicone. I don't know what it's made of, but every other dosing pump on the market that I've ever used, that tube might need to be replaced annually, not every 2 to 3 months. And I just feel like that's not right. So it's frustrating, okay? I don't like it. And I really wish they'd listen to me. I should really write them a strongly worded email. But the reason I brought it up is because my calcium reactor, it's what I used to feed the water to my reactor, and the water was coming out less and less. And so my alkalinity was trying to drop. So I had to go calibrate it again. And I said, to get 60 milliliters a minute, this is the calibration level. And the thing has like, so there's actually this high-pitched whining thing happening behind me right now because I didn't spend, the $12, $15 or whatever that piece costs to change out that tubing again, which I'll do today as well because I need to solve it. It's just, that should last longer. Not happy about that. There is a video, Parker's Reef out of the UK. He did a video talking about different tubing. I was super excited. Turns out it's the exact same tubing. He just found a source where you could buy it. And then, of course, someone here in the US found a source where you could buy it. So you could buy yourself a 5-foot piece of tubing, or 5 yards, whatever it is. And it wasn't expensive. I mean, the tubing was whatever, like $15, $17 for this long piece of tubing. But the shipping from that one company in the US was like $25. So you're spending like $45, and then you can cut the tubing yourself, and you can rebuild that part and save some money. And according to Parker's Reef, doing this system of fixing it yourself, it'll cost you like $3 a repair. You know, that's how much it'll cost you in tubing. And I'm like, but the hassle factor is I got to take it out, rebuild it, or rebuild 5 or 6 of them, and then have 4 of them hanging on the wall ready for when I need one, and I need to swap them out. It's another thing I have to do as a hobbyist, and I don't feel like I should have to keep doing this. I like to, you know, can you imagine if you had to take out your skimmer every month and a half to clean the pump? You were like, no way. You know, there's certain pieces of gear we let run nonstop. Your return pump is one. Your skimmer is another one. You clean it like once a year. The return pump you might clean once or twice a year. Yeah, we clean the glass all the time. But, you know, the pumps here inside the tank, the vortex, those you clean every 2 or 3 months because you want them to look nice and provide plenty of flow. But other things can go a long duration. And dosing pumps should last a long time. So, anyway, had to say that. Let's see. Trying to think what else I do with the tank. I feed it every single night, and I always feed it a mixture of frozen foods. I don't use one brand. My main source is Rod's Food, and I mix that with some PE mysis, and I put in some mini mysis from, I think it's Ocean Nutrition, and sometimes I'll put in pellet food from Reef Nutrition. So I mix all this stuff up. I thaw it in a cup of water, and then as soon as it's melted, I can squirt it into all my tanks. And that way everyone can chew on what they like the most. And that way I'm not just saying, well, today you're getting herbivore mix, tomorrow you're getting omnivore mix, or all you're getting is nori for the next 4 days, and then finally I'll give you some frozen on Friday. Nope, I do the same thing every single night. I mix all the different foods in a bowl, thaw it out, pour it in the tank. The return pump is off. After 10 minutes, the return pump turns back on, and the food's already gone. The food's gone in about 2 minutes flat. So I don't feel like at all that I'm overfeeding. And I can't explain why my nitrates are where they are, but at the same time, the reef's looking great. You literally saw it on video, how healthy and happy and everything's growing. So nitrate is not nearly as vicious as we think it is, but you know, it would be nicer if my number was lower. I'd like it to be under 20, to be honest. So let's see. Let's look at some of your questions. And thank you, Kyle, for saying happy tankiversary. I appreciate that. Sean, I just saw your comment. He said, I'm 10th. That's awesome. That's hilarious. Kevin says, I want to seed coralline with rock from the old tank to the new tank, but the old tank sometimes has hair algae. Do I need to worry about seeding hair algae in the new tank? Well, yes, we don't want hair algae to migrate into your new tank, so I would definitely look at the rock you're moving and get only clean rock and move that. Usually your base rock, the rock that's underneath all the other rock, is covered with coralline, but doesn't have hair algae because hair algae likes light. And if you can move that over into the tank, you'll get some coralline. You can also scrape coralline off the side of the old tank and grab those flakes and scatter them in the new tank like confetti, and that will help work. If you have any PVC pipe or lock line fittings that don't have hair algae on them, and you can scrape them clean in the main tank, you know, the new tank, you can get some coralline in there as well. And then there's products on the market like Purple Up, and there's that new stuff from PNS. Yeah, that sounds right. That you can put in there, helps promote coralline growth, and you can get that going. But I wouldn't want to take a rock with hair algae and put it in my new tank, because you don't want the hair algae to take hold in the new tank and become a big problem. Hey, AJ's here. That's nice. Gregory says, how long do you plan to keep this tank up? Are you worried about how long it will last? To be honest, when I set this tank up, I was thinking a 10-year dream tank. And I set up in 2011. And after 13 months, it sprung a leak. But that was when I started. So technically, 2021 should have been my 10-year. So after 18 months of waiting for the repaired tank to be delivered, this one was set up, and it's at the 9-year mark now. This is version 2. It's actually a completely different tank, too. And I have another year left on my warranty, right? My mental warranty, my plan. But I mean, if it lasted 20 years, that would be awesome. But I tend to not trust silicone at all. It's like black magic, and you never know what's going to fail you or bite you. And, you just need to be prepared for emergencies and be ready to catch stuff and have somewhere to put livestock. Clearly, it would be hard to move all my livestock out of a 400-gallon into something immediately, but I have a 100-gallon Rubbermaid trough. I've got 3 blue barrels that hold 55 gallons. I always have a frag tank running. There's Caitlin's tank here that's got some space. The anemone cube, when it's operational, has room for things on the sand bed. So, I mean, and then there's the sump. So I have places to put things, but I want to use this tank for as long as I can. Let's put it that way. And then when it fails at some point, then I'm going to do something different. Don't know what yet. Good question, though. And then Jamie's comment, what's the deal, y'all? You're just trying to create some chaos in my life? When he wears that silicone seams after 9 years. Yeah, of course. Jerks. AJ, you are a liar. He says he told me not to put the Achilles in there. Oh, great. I think this is William. Says, cheers to the 9 years mark. Thank you for the video consultation recently. I do that, by the way, guys. Getting the pH right finally at 8.1 and trying to keep it around that point. That's excellent. Yeah, if you did not know, I do one-on-one phone calls. And I will get on any kind of media you like, whether it's Skype or FaceTime or Messenger video or whatever. You can show me your tank. You can show me what's going on. I give you an hour of my time. It's $125, and I'm happy to help you. We just schedule a time that works for you that also works within my own schedule. And I know it sounds like a lot of money, but it is what I charge for that hour. So if you're interested and you'd like to get that help with your tank, it's not like you're going to have to do it every single month, but some people do. Some people want to have a phone call weekly or monthly or every few months. And that is part of the services I offer. So while I'm doing that, I'll stick this on the screen. Just a reminder, please do shop at Me Lives Reef. I appreciate all the business you give me. The latest thing to be added to the website, well, it's going to be added this weekend, is going to be seat shade pumps. I actually brought in a whole bunch of different types of pumps. They arrived yesterday, and they will be put on the website. And you've got return pumps, you've got water change pumps, you've got in-tank pumps. I also got some pump clean if you want some of their magic elixir that helps get the stuff off your dirty pumps to make them look clean again. So those things will be added to the website shortly, and then you'll be able to place an order. If you see something in the background of my videos, you're like, hey, I want that, but it's not on your website, just send me an email and I will send you an invoice for that item. It just hasn't been promoted to the website yet. And the whole propagating of things to the site, it's an effort. Everything takes time. And there's one of me, and there's 10,000 of you guys, and there's 400 items in that building that I have to keep track of and replenish and box up and ship out. So I am always trying to add more things. The latest issue of Coral Magazine just arrived. That'll also be added to the website. I got some Neuro 5 and Neuro 3 pumps in. If that's something you're interested in, those will be added to the website. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. Tom says, my Achilles tries to shank me if I wear black gloves in the tank. That's interesting. So I guess your hand looks like a black tang. Ryan says, what is your trick for getting favia and favites to grow in a way where the plug isn't usually obvious? There's a couple of things I do with those corals. Well, actually, there's 3. This one here in the front, this big green one right here, it's actually on a PNW single frag rack cradle that I jammed down into the sand so that way the coral wouldn't keep falling over because it was top heavy. And so it was anchored into something that's buried. And that coral was really tall, and now it has really widened out. It actually looks really cool now. And I believe I got that coral in the last year as well, maybe a little bit longer than a year. But so that's one way. Another way is if you have a frag plug on the bottom, you can either remove the plug entirely, like snip it off and just have a bare coral that you then glue to the rock work or set it down in the sand. The other choice is to cut off the post so you just have the disc and then mount that onto the rock work and let the coral eventually cover it. In the back of my tank, there was a really pretty coral that is called Diploastria. The nickname I give it is called Nipples. And it's really pretty, super slow growing. And it was a nugget about this big. I don't know, that's the length of an olive, I guess. and it was sitting on a frag plug, and I didn't like the frag plug, so I just took it off, and I had it somewhere else. And while Dwayne was here during one of his visits, he glued it to the back of the tank, and then I had to the right of it, like 2 inches away, upstream I should add, was a favia or war coral that I was really excited to get because I like war coral. It's really pretty. And it was dying, and I couldn't understand why until one night I looked at nipples, and it was throwing all these tentacles at the war coral and stinging and killing it. And I was like, well, you win. And I told Dwayne, thanks for putting that coral in that horrible spot. I tried to blame him because there's no way it was my fault. And that coral has grown larger. The war coral's long gone. I ended up putting a Montipora there that's been a little bit tougher. It can handle it. But that's some of my suggestions. Remove the flag plug, cut off the bottom so that it sits flat, or submerge it into the sand bed enough to where you can't see it at all and just have the coral showing. Anthony, thank you very much. Says the tank looks really nice and the water's so clear. That's the goal. That's how it's supposed to be. Trevor says, I was wondering what effect do you think deodorant, hairspray, aerosols have on our reefs? Thanks in advance. They're all bad for our tank. They do not belong in the tank. You know how people are so concerned about using Windex by the tank? I see people always do this. Like, you can't use Windex. Well, number one, you can, okay? It's glass. That's what Windex is for. Everyone's like, it'll go through the glass and it has ammonia. It's going to kill your tank. No, Windex will not penetrate the glass. That is impossible. I don't know where people come up with this stuff, but there is a chance as you're spraying it and the mist is going out that some of it could drizzle down and get sucked in by the protein skimmer and get into the water column. So if you are spraying Windex, your cabinet should be closed in the front of your tank. If your cabinets are open or you don't have woodwork at all, maybe spray it on a towel away from the tank and then turn around and wipe the glass. And that way the mist is going this way away from your reef tank and it won't get in there. Now, what about the things on your skin? Lotions on the hand, you just got your manicure done and they put oils on your nails, or you use deodorant, you're using shampoo, you're using aftershave, all these different things that are on your body. You don't want those in the water. So, for example, if I'm going to have to really work in my reef tank, to here, I'd probably want to take a shower first and just get all that stuff off of me and get the deodorant off of me as well, so I don't even put deodorant into the water itself, and then work in the tank and then take another shower to get clean and then put deodorant back on because I like to smell good. But I would say that there is a risk of those things getting in your tank. It also can come from someone being near your tank. Like, for example, if your reef tank is in your bedroom and your significant other is in the bathroom, the master bath, and she's doing her hair and she's spraying all the aqua, whatever, and the mist is going through the air, that can land in your tank and it can affect it badly, which would be a reason to cover your tank or to ask her to close the doors, which she won't do. She has to breathe. She can't do that. She's spraying all that stuff in the air. You can turn the vent fan on in the bathroom to help pull out some of that. But yes, there is a risk to the tank from those things that are aerosolizing and getting into the room. I've never experienced it, but I'm assuming that even things like candles that you light in the same room potentially could possibly affect a reef tank. But I've had I like vanilla. So I have vanilla candles going quite often. I've never seen it affect any of my aquariums in all the years I've been in the hobby. I don't think that that's something to be really worried about. But smoking, like a smoker, just the fact they're filling this room with smoke, that can affect a reef tank. And everything in the tank can get discolored. And you'll actually see the difference. The aquarium will do so much better when the person stops smoking or goes outside to smoke instead of smoking in the same room with the tank. So yes, things can happen to our tank, and we want to avoid some of the external pollutants that are in the air from getting into our aquariums. Minnie says, do you think polycarbonate lids help more than they hurt with light refraction, I think you're saying? I can't stop my evaporation. Well, evaporation is not a bad thing. I have a polycarbonate lid on Caitlin's reef, and that is this tank right here. Here, I'll pivot this for you for a second. The tank doesn't look good, so don't judge. But there's my lid, perfect time. See, I'll just show you that. This is my solid lid. with a feeding door. And the only opening is right here where the wires come in. And that spot there, I'd like to put something there just to kind of like a sponge or something. Again, to create a solid spot so the Helfriki will not say that's the perfect place to jump out. But because of that, this tank has very little evaporation at all. But I do have to take this off. And if you don't, it will grow an algae on the underside and it will block the light. And you'll see the corals struggling because they're not getting enough light penetration. So you got to take this off regularly. I'd say at least once every couple of weeks, and clean it top and bottom, and then put it back on the tank again. See, I didn't have to show you my dirty tank. Now, can it waste the light? It does block some of the light. If you were to put a PAR sensor under the light and then put the polycarbonate in place and measure again, you would see the number drop off. It could drop 10%, 15%. It could be an impact. So that just means you need to run your light a little bit brighter to make up for that. But as soon as that polycarbonate gets dirty, it's even less light. So you want to make sure you're staying on top of it and keeping it clean so you're not watching things struggle. And I've got a bunch of zoanthids in that tank, and some are really stretched, which means they're really trying to get to the light. And others are not. So maybe that's just because of where they're placed compared to the other ones, and they're not in the hot spot, and so they're not getting as much as they would like. But I have a single light over that tank, and I can't do much other than tilt it slightly, which I don't. I just leave it alone. Saints Dust Aquarium says, I've been thinking about setting up a saltwater tank. You should totally do it. I highly recommend it. And this channel is filled with information about how to set up a tank and how to maintain a tank, how to do the water testing, everything about protein skimmers. I mean, there's a ton of information here. And you could just literally go through all the titles and just find whatever topic you want. I've probably talked about it. So welcome to the channel. And if you haven't done it yet, subscribe. Reef the Sea Forever says, my verse has been running for 2 years straight with no issues. Well, I want to hear how you mean running straight. Are you dosing like 3 milliliters a day? Or are you running it like a machine, like I do? Chili Wills Reef says, what's the highest speed do you run your circulation pump? If you mean the vortex, I think the most they run at is maybe 75%, maybe 80%. I've got like 4 different modes that they go through each day, from reef crest to lagoon mode to what's that other one? Nutrient export mode, and then constant, and between, and so it varies and it bounces around in those numbers. But I have like a low point and a high point, and I just kind of found that sweet spot. The same with the Nero 5 pump on the 2 other tanks. I just picked a spot that looked good and the stuff's moving a little bit, and I'm happy with that. Sometimes it really isn't so much the number as much as how your livestock is responding to that flow. And if you have soft corals that are leaning over to the side, it's too much flow. If they're kind of just swaying, it's probably the right amount. If you have SPS corals that are not doing well at all, it could be they aren't getting nearly enough flow, but because they don't move, you can't tell. But I love reef crest for SPS because you can watch our little polyps just dance on the sticks. And you just have to look really, really close. Alex says, do you think polyester is safe in a reef tank? Yeah, it is. That's no problem. People have done that for many years. Michael says, I have a mimic tang and a blue-eye tang. What's the blue-eye tang? And I want a powder blue. Would it be safe to put the powder blue in by itself as the last tang? It's a 180-gallon tank. I have 4 other tangs in there. I'm going to say with 4 tangs, you're maxed out in a 180-gallon tank. I had 6 in a 280-gallon tank, and I felt like it was maxed out. In the reef behind me, I've had, it's a 400-gallon tank. It's 7 feet long, and I've had as many as 5 tangs in there at one time. And right now I have 4. And I don't see the need to put more and more tangs. I don't know. I mean, maybe you just love the color of it, the shape of it, and you're just like, I got to have that. But there is tangs or cows. They eat a lot, they poop a lot, and they can really affect your water quality. I do know that I've had several people say to me, it was really good that you added the Achilles Tang last. I mean, I waited 9 years, but adding it last because it tends to be a very aggressive fish. And it will be aggressive towards some fish, but not all. It's not like, oh, you can't put in a clownfish, you can't put in a mandarin, you can't put in a wrasse. It's not like that, but the tang will be aggressive toward other tangs. And so there is that. But you're talking about compatibility between the mimic, the blue eye, and then the powder blue. And then you said you have 4 other tangs. You didn't say what, I mean, I only see 3 on this list, but you just don't want to tip the scales too hard the wrong direction and end up with either water quality problems or constant fighting, you know, the skirmish. Is the blue eye by any chance the Atlantic blue tang? Is that what you're talking about? Because the Atlantic blue tang is very aggressive, and it's just a mean fish. And I had one briefly, and it was so mean. It was mean to everything. So I went ahead and I gave it to someone else that had a bigger tank and got the problem out of my house. Richard says, what is your diet for Spock? Primarily, it's going to be the frozen food every single night. And then when I think about it, the nori, which I've been doing like twice a week, I want to step that up. I want to put in more. I think I'll be better about it. I've got this thing that was given to me. I keep saying I'm going to do a video about it, but I haven't. So I'll just talk about it on the live stream right now. I think I showed it to you guys once a few weeks ago, but I haven't implemented it yet. It hasn't gotten wet yet. So I got this thing at Aquashella in Chicago. It holds on magnetically to the glass. So there's a magnet in here and there's a magnet in here. And you would just put this on your tank. And then the nori is inside this screen. So the way it works, and it comes in lots of different colors. I wanted something that was not going to irritate me. So he had one that had black PVC. I was like, yeah, I want the black. But I thought nori's dark. Maybe I'll get purple. Maybe that way I can see what the nori's missing. But you've got this screen that he designed for me specifically because the original screen was way smaller holes. And I didn't think Spock could get her mouth through the holes. So he basically cut out a bunch of squares for me. And then you put the nori sheet into a little slice in there. This is awkward to do on camera, just so you know. You wrap the nori around. You slide your screen over the nori. You put your little retaining ring on the end. And then you would lower it into the tank and let the fish chew on it. So this is what you would see in your tank. Now you might see this end if it's on the front. And then the tube goes in and the fish can eat from 360 degrees. If you put on the back of the tank, you would see this big round hole. I told him what I would like him to do is put a solid end on here so it floats. So if it were to separate, it's at the surface. I can just grab it so it doesn't just fall and hit something down below. So he did a test, and because of the slit, it sank like a rock. And I thought maybe it would hold vacuum, but I was wrong. So then I suggested, what if you put foam in there so it's buoyant and then a cover? So he's testing different things because I keep demanding more than what he invented. But I was just like, yeah, it could be even better if he did this. And he's been listening to me, the crazy man. But anyway, I'll be putting this in my tank soon. And that way we'll see how the fish do on it. And that'll be a chance for all the tangs, the Achilles, the Cole, the yellow, and the Nassau Spock to get nori that way. Chaz says, can you show your power heads? Well, there's an MP60 right there. And then there's one behind the rock in the exact same spot. So there's 2 there. And then right there is an MP40. And that is facing forward so that this stuff will move. And then these right here are actually flexible random flow generators. And the return pump pushes through them. And they're shaped in a cone with these fins on the inside. So it's constantly sending water different directions all the time. And if you put your hand in front of it, just you can feel the water hit different parts of your palm. It's the neatest effect. You're like, how is it doing that? It literally is just doing it of its own accord. And those 5 things in my tank are what create the flow in my display. Kevin says, are roller mat filters overrated? Oh, I don't think so. I think everything serves a purpose. I mean, these days, everyone seems to want one. Lots of sump builders are building them with them included. Some have big, huge rolls that look like paper towels. Others have the smaller rolls that look like toilet paper, and then they got even smaller rolls. Like I said, it's just you got to buy a bunch of these rolls. You got to keep on top of it. You got to make sure that as soon as it gets near the end, you start the next one to keep feeding it through, or you got to disassemble. And but the principle behind it was like, if you can use the roller mat to capture all the detritus floating around the tank, it would be a nicer, cleaner way than having to deal with cleaning filter socks every few days. And most people that run filter socks, and I'm going to say this just as an absolute when I never do that, but most people that run filter socks don't change them until they're overflowing. And once they're overflowing, they're not doing anything because they're overflowing. But the thing is, everything that was trapped in that filter sock, from the first minute they got trapped in there, is staying in the water column and it is rotting. So if you put in a filter sock in your tank, in your sump, and the food goes in there because you don't turn off your return pump, for example, it just sits there rotting. And if you just put in the sock that day and then you fed that night, and then you feed the next day and you feed the third day and the fish are pooping, you've got 3 days worth of waste sitting on the inside surface of the sock. And then you finally get around to changing that sock out. You could have had that stuff decaying in there for 3, 5, 7 days. So that's why, number one, you're supposed to replace your socks every 3 days, like clockwork, and get that out. But the fleece system, it rolls up that dirty stuff and gets it out of the water column because it's always a clean piece of screen. So in theory, you're removing the waste far sooner and it's not staying in the water column where it can rot and break down and add to any kind of nutrient problems. But is it overrated? I don't think so. I think some people like it. I just chose to. I mean, I'm not, that was never a thing for me. I look at my tank and I'm happy with the way it looks. And so I don't feel the need for any kind of filter sock or fleece roller or filter pad or anything. I just let the protein skimmer do its job. Canadian Reefer says, what is the lifespan of the EB832 power module? If you're talking about the energy bar itself, it can last 4, 5, 6 years. Several that were made, well, not several, a lot of them were made like 4 or 5 years ago, had a chip in them that has been burning out and ruining the bar. And then people are literally taking them apart and unsoldering that chip out and putting a new one in. And that new chip is like $8 or $10. And then they have a fully functional EB832 again. The newer ones that are available now have the better chip that should not do that ever again. The problem is all these old ones are old and they're all just systematically failing. And so every time you look around on kind of forums, you see people saying my EB832 failed, all the lights are on but nothing's working because of that stupid chip. And it's just unfortunate, but they are completely out of warranty and they have, gone beyond the scope of what Neptune would fix for free. So I have 2 EB832s that have been rebuilt and they're waiting in the back room for if one fails where I can just swap them out and copy my code over. Actually, there's a task that will copy all your code for you. You can literally say switching out EB832 for this one and it will copy and I think then delete the old. It's pretty neat. And but having an extra one on hand would be smart, just to own it. I know it's not going to be plugged in. I know you don't have all your stuff in it, but if you at least have it in your possession, you're one step ahead. And that's why I have 2 extras ready. And I have 2 on my system now. And then I've got 3 or 4 of the older energy bars, the black ones, that are also in use right now. So, and they're super old, I've had them forever. Amanda says, first time viewing live, watch plenty of your other replays, love the content. I'm a first time reefer with a 200-gallon system up for about 7 months. I may take you up on that one-on-one phone call. Awesome. Yeah, just reach out to me any way you want. You can email me at sales@milasreef.com. You can send me a message on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube or here in the comments, whatever. I just need a way to get a hold of you so we can schedule it. Ugly Reefer, don't call yourself that. Says, any key pointers or advice on starting an all Aquapora tank? I actually have an article on my website that is SPS care. So if you go to milasreef.com, which you already see where it says shop milasreef.com right there, if you just go to my website and then go to the search box and type in SPS care, it'll take you right to my article, and that article will give you all the information you need to know to keep your Aquapora happy. Speaking of things, I'm going to move that over and leave it right there. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on the screen. If you are not a member of Club Mila's Reef, that is a group that I started on Facebook over 3 years ago. I was going to say 4 years ago. And we have something shy of 10,000 members in there now. And we are there as a helpful group that do not put you down. The whole purpose of my group was to allow us to communicate daily versus YouTube. We only get once a week. And that way you can show me your tank. You can ask me your questions in there. And of course, there's a lot of helpful hobbyists in that group that are there to help you figure out what's going on or just to enjoy the eye candy. If you have a great looking tank and you want to share it, we want to see it. So if you aren't a member of Club Mueller's Reef, be sure that you apply. Now, there will be 3 questions you have to answer, and if you don't answer them, I just hit delete. So you do have to answer the questions. There's a rules video in there that tells you the rules of the group. Our rules are not like everyone else's rules. A lot of them are the same, but we have some special ones. Off the top of my head, you got to treat others kindly. That's a rule. Another one, you can't mention the Tang police. It's just not allowed. I'm sick of it. So that's a rule. Can't do it. Also, if you get thrown out of the group, you can never come back. So if you're having a bad day, that is not the day to be in Club Mueller's Reef venting. You know, it's understandable something's wrong with your tank and you want help. We're here for you. But if you're just mad and you just want to kick your dog and you want to, you know, scratch someone's car with keys, I mean, if that's your day, do a water change. Go grab a barrel of salt and do 10 reps. I don't know. Burn off some energy. And don't, you know, come to Club Mueller's Reef raising hell, because that's not going to work in your favor. You're going to get thrown out and you won't get to come back in. It's we want the group to be friendly, and we want people to not be scared to ask questions. That was the whole purpose of it. And I just find that so many groups, if you ask a question, there was always a group of trolls just ready to attack and pounce and make people feel stupid or insecure or guilty or wrong or whatever and stupid. They should not have that. That should not be happening. When I go to other groups looking for help in whatever field I'm trying to do it, I'm prepared for that, but I don't like it and I don't engage with it. So as they attack me, I just let it roll off my back and I go look for the comments that help me. But in our group, it was designed to be a helpful group that has a good spirit, and it was designed that way from the beginning. And it said, if this doesn't work, if everyone's just going to attack everyone, I will just close the group. I'll just get rid of it, because that means it didn't work. But I just felt like we have it in our ability to be nice to each other, to ask questions, and not be jerks. And so far, so good. Now, it may seem like to some people, you might say, well, this group's a little too polite, and you're being too nice, and you're coddling. No, we're trying to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to get some help. And obviously, we want to do the best we can, but in the end, we're each responsible for our own tanks, and we're responsible for the life inside those tanks. So there is going to be some passion. People do care about livestock, and they will let you know in no uncertain terms sometimes. But it's how you word it that will make or break your relationship with the group. So enough about that. Mike says, vinegar and water and newspaper, old window cleaners. Where do you get newspaper? I've heard of this. I know, I miss it. I used to have newspaper delivered to my house every single day, literally for 2 reasons. 1, so I could read the comics. And 2, so I could wrap my products to ship them. And it got too expensive. I mean, you know, I remember when I first signed up for the newspaper, it was like $12 for the year. And that wasn't like 100 years ago. That was their special. And I was like, yeah, $12, that's fantastic. Yes, sign me up. And then after a while, it was, I don't know, like $180 for the year. I'm like, geez, okay. So I paid my $180. And then 6 months later, the guy's at my door saying, it's time for your bill again. I was like, what do you mean? I just paid you like 6 months ago. He goes, yeah, that was for 6 months. I said, wait, it's $360 a year for the newspaper? You can cancel my subscription. So I no longer get the comics, and I don't have any newspaper handy to even wipe my tank down with. But what can you do? Vibe Aquatics, that was so nice of you. Came by just to give us a thumbs up. Yeah, a thumbs up on the videos is appreciated. So if you happen to desire to do that, I'd appreciate it. Alex says, is randomized flow better than stable flow? Okay, let me answer that 2 ways. Number 1, stable flow might be your return pump, and that should just be steady, the same number all the time, day and night. Don't slow it down at night, just keep it the same pace. So that way the water draining down is getting just as much oxygen during the nighttime as it is in the daytime. That way when the heaters are operating, they're pushing up the heated water just as quickly as they do around the clock, okay? Return pumps should be the same all the time. Your other pumps, whether they're gyres or vortex or Tunzi or Siche or Jabo or whatever it is you got in your tank, the wave pumps from Neptune, any of those pumps, you have all kinds of settings you can pick. And my preferred choice is chaotic flow rather than randomized. Because chaotic means this one is crashing against this one and it creates this crazy ripple that's unexpected. And that kind of constant chaotic flow is how corals tend to stay cleaner longer. And you know, there are certain corals that do really well on the reef crest where they're getting pounded with waves, while other corals do not do well that way. Zoanthids don't want to get pounded. LPS corals don't want to get pounded, but SPS totally live and thrive on that. So certain corals do better. You have to know which coral you're talking about to decide this, but typically I always aim for chaotic flow in the tank. And if you were to watch the surface of this water right now, I'm going to get rid of these two windows. You can kind of see my surface. It's not just moving this way like a still river. I mean, it's definitely moving that direction, but there's a lot of ripples happening on the underneath. Here, let me see if I can tilt this up a little bit. We'll go down. And then we'll tilt up a little bit. Wish I could zoom in for you, but I don't think I can. Let's see if this thing zooms. I have no idea. I didn't even try. Nope. I think it's for a... Ah, hang on. Let's try this. Holy crap, you can zoom in. So you can see there is the pulsing from the random flow generators, and you can see how it's chopping up the surface a little bit. But it's not just water shooting up. It's literally up and down and that way and this way. That's constantly changing. Then you got the vortex in the back that's pushing water forward. You can see it's spinning right there in the background. But you can see the surface is doing all kinds of stuff. And this is the kind of surface you want in your tank. You don't want it to look like a lagoon, typically. Wow, did not know I could do that. How fun. Oh, you don't want to see my dirty corner. It's all tilted. Got to keep the water level. All right. Bots, thank you very much for saying that. It says, watching the live stream during my nursing shift. The tank is beautiful. What a comeback. Thank you very much for saying that. Isoline says, can I run a 30-gallon reef tank without the fancy gadget like Apex? Yes, you can. I have a 27-gallon tank that's to my right. It's actually on this channel where you can watch it. And in that video, I show how I set it up with a heater, a light, a power head, an air stone. That's it. And then live rock and live sand. There's no hang-on back filters. There's no protein skimmer. There's no dosing pump. Nothing's on that tank. The only thing that tank gets is water changes. And right now I'm behind because I haven't mixed up my saltwater batch. But the water change is how I export dirt out of there and bring in nice clean water for the aquarium. So yes, you can totally do that. Now, with my tank, I chose to add a controller on there. I added the Hydros controller, which is like an Apex. The Apex is one brand, the Hydros is another. And the Hydros tells me if the pH is getting too low or if the tank is too cold or too warm. I get notification on my phone, and I really like that. Now, do you have to have it? No, but it's so beneficial to be notified if something's wrong. How about being notified the power is out and your tank has no electricity at all? You know, that's something that would be good to do. Now, there's certain things you have to set up in advance to make that work. Number one, the Hydros controller would have to be on a battery backup, and your router at home would have to be on a battery backup so that it can send the signal out to send you a notification to your phone. But I have had times where I was doing a water change on the tank, and then I put everything back together, and I walked away from it, and then a little while later I got a notification saying the temperature of the tank was wrong. And I thought, well, that's weird. And so I went to look, and the probe had come out. Now, with the probe out of the water, the heater wants to run nonstop to get the temperature up. So I literally put the probe back in where it belonged and solved the problem. But if I didn't get the notification, I never would have noticed. So just think about this. I do a water change, I put it back, and then the next day, everything's dead in my tank because the tank got so warm because the heater didn't see the temperature change. So that is why I like some kind of a controller. Now, there are different ones on the market that are as cheap as $200. and then you can get immersed and spend $500, $800, $1,000. I mean, yes, it can become very expensive, but having a very small, basic monitoring only system is a great way to start off with to give yourself some information. And so that's why I started carrying the Hydros controller in my shop. So if that is of interest to you and you wanted to get one, I actually have the monitoring one for $200. And then later on, if you say, I want to expand, I want to do a few more things, you can literally add another module and expand it. It's not like you have to re-buy the first thing all over again. So that is something you can consider. And that will be added to the website soon. I just literally took it out of the box a few days ago. Bots, I don't know the answer to your question. Maybe someone else does. He says, I'm trying to get the color out, like you don't want to have color anymore, out of my African gold Midas Blenny. Any tips on what to feed? I'm feeding LRS frozen food and some hatchery pellets right now. It can be a diet thing. It's possible. It could be a lighting thing too. It could be the spectrum of your lights makes the fish not look the right color. For example, there was a company came out years ago. Well, they're still around. They came out with a new light fixture. It was Orphec. And one of their sales pitches was, if we adjust the UV, the orange on that clownfish becomes way more correct. It looks more orange. And I literally watched him adjust something on the controller and I was like, wow, that fish does look better. So it could just be your tank is I mean, my Achilles Tang, there it is right there. Right. There it is. It's pretty in white light. In blue light, there's nothing to see. It's a black fish and the red spot doesn't even look red. So having the right lighting will make a fish either look good or not. But your diet is important. The water quality is important. I mean, all that comes in, it's all a factor. But usually things like LRS, Reef Nutrition, Rod's Food, these are all three different brands of foods that I think would do really well with your fish. But I'm not 100% certain on that specific one. Richard says, I've had several of those cleaner wrasses over the years. What is your secret for longevity of yours? Well, to be honest, I remember when I did the video, which I think was about a year ago, year and a half ago. And I don't like this. It's too high. There's too much board. I'll show you some of the table. There we go. When I put it in, I said, hey guys, just so you know, these things don't live long. And everyone replied, every person that replied in that video, what are you talking about? I've had mine for years. And I was like, really? I thought cleaner wrasses were like, you know, it didn't go well. So I was wrong. I mean, I know I tried them in the past and they didn't go well. And I saw other people posting them in the past, but apparently something's changed. Maybe it's the foods we give these days. But the cleaner wrasses, they seem to last much longer now. And so I've had mine now for a year and a half, 2 years. I'd have to see when I did my video here on this channel. But I guess having a big enough tank and plenty of fish for it to follow around. I'll tell you, when it's dinner time, the cleaner wrasse follows Spock around like a remora following a shark. It's crazy. Literally following under its belly, waiting for something to poop out. It's every single day. It's super funny. Oh, look at this. Gregory says, my wife used to love the Airwick plugins. I noticed a mucus-like clear film that was always on top of my sump, on the water, and inside the sump as well. And so I put an end to the Airwicks and it went away. Yeah, that I believe. That's a totally different device. It's really putting something out. I've purchased those myself in the past, and I've put them like in the bathroom. And the smell was so strong that I was like, oh, it was just too much for the room. Even, you know, it's a small bathroom. And it poisoned the bathroom and the bedroom. And so I would literally like plug it in for a couple of hours and then unplug it. But it's super far away from my reef tank. But I'm in general, I don't like things in the living space where the aquarium is, like that type of scenario. Lighting a candle I think is okay. But having like a Airwick plug-in that's in there nonstop, you just proved it. I mean, the fact that it put a skin on the surface of the water that you had to blot off on a regular basis would be enough of a reason to not do it at all in that same room. Thank you for bringing that up. Julian says, could you add a second skimmer if you did away with the filter socks? You can. I've always run one skimmer. I know that I'd been told in the past, if you want to run two skimmers, you had to have two different types of skimmers, like one's a Beckett and one's a needle wheel, because if you had two identical ones, one did a job and the other one didn't. Now, I never tested that out myself. I just believed it. I mean, why would someone lie about this? But If you have room to run 2 skimmers, whether they're identical or different types, different designs, you could do that. I've just never felt the need. I would think if you're having to run 2 skimmers, it's not because you remove the socks, it's because the one skimmer is not good enough to keep up with your whole bioload. So you'd want to make sure that you have the right size rated skimmer for your system. Rick says, what heater and heater controller do you recommend? Okay, so a lot of people talk about the Inkbird. The Inkbird controller. And they come with these monster heaters. And it's a BRS thing that everyone buys. And everyone's buying these controllers with 2 800-watt heaters, which are monster heaters. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. And I don't recommend that. First of all, you need the right amount of watts for your aquarium. And if you have a 100-gallon tank, you need, generally speaking, 3 watts per gallon. You may say, well, where I live, I need 5 watts per gallon. But at least know the wattage. But a general starting point would be 3 watts per gallon. And if you put in a 300-watt heater on a 100-gallon tank, that should maintain the tank's aquarium temperature even when it's really cold at night. And then if it's plugged into an Inkbird, that's great. It should shut it off. If you don't have that, a Renko controller has been around forever. It's an industrial-looking thing. It's not plug and play, and there's a little bit of wiring involved. Very dependable. Or you can do something like the Hydros or the Apex. These are 2 other controllers that control heaters. I've been using the Apex forever to control my heaters, and I use Ebo Jaeger. And Ebo Jaeger is gone now, so I believe at this point I'm using Eheim Jaeger. I keep saying Jaeger. It's something like that. But I really like that brand, and when they no longer existed, Eheim took over. I did use some Cobalt heaters. Haven't had any problems with them either, but I don't use the maximum wattage. My tank is 400 to 450 gallons of liquid water volume, so I would need somewhere around 1,200 watts of heat. I just use 3 300-watt heaters for my tank, and after about an hour and 20 minutes or so, they turn off. And the controller, the Apex, tells them when to turn on, when to turn off, and that's it. I've been doing it like that for almost 2 decades. So that's what I recommend, is the Apex with the right size heaters. The reason I don't like the 800-watt heaters, they're so freaking big. And if you did 2 800-watt heaters, and the thing is, here was one of my questions I asked a while back. I asked some people that are smarter than me. I said, okay, guys, I have this much water. I want to use this much heater. But what if I had twice as many heaters? Would it heat the water faster to where they turn off sooner to save me money? And all the answers came back with pretty much the same thing. A watt is a watt. So if you use 900 watts of heater to warm up your tank, now it takes an hour and 20 minutes. If you doubled the heaters to have 1,800 watts of heat, and assuming your circuits could handle that, that's an important part. Your heating time would be only cut in half. You wouldn't like shave off so much time like they were on for 10 minutes and you saved so much money. Because that was what I was thinking. Well, if I use a little bit more heat, will they turn off way sooner? Like, no, it won't. That's not how thermodynamics works. Like, oh, so I just use the right amount of heat that can't cook my tank. And the other part, like I said before, 800-watt heaters, they're 8 amps each. And that can be more than the plug that you're plugging into. It can fry the power strip. It can fry the controlled outlet on an Apex or on a Hydros. I mean, you got to find out what each outlet can handle, and you want to make sure your heaters don't overtax it. So it would be much smarter to use smaller heaters. And always, whatever the total heat you need for your tank, you want to divide it across 2 or 3 heaters. Now, I know if you have a small tank, you don't want 3 heaters, and I understand that. But if you have a small tank, let's say it's a 35-gallon tank, and you need 100 watts of heat, I would get 2 50-watt heaters instead of 100-watt heater. That way, if the heater fails in the on position, it doesn't have the ability to cook the tank. And now, if you had a controller on there, it would either try to turn off the heater to stop the heat, or it would send you a notification saying the tank is getting too hot, get home now. So, I mean, there are some ways to protect yourself. But in the end, you want to have the right amount of heat divided across 2 heaters, so if one fails, the other doesn't have it won't have the juice to cook your tank. It may never turn off again. You might look at it, every single time you look at it, the light's on, like, jam, that heater has never, ever stopped. But the other one just cycles on and off like it should. That was good. It didn't hurt your tank. But you need to replace the one that never turns off because it has failed you now. But we definitely want to have the right amount and not more than what the outlets can handle or the power strips. Manuel says, congrats on your 9th year. I sent my very first ICP test, returned with good results. They only recommended a water change. How easy is that? I still have the brown dust every 2 days on... Still have that brown dust every 2 days. Your advice is great. The brown dust on the sand bed? So that could be a form of diatoms or mulm. Mulm is a type of waste that happens in our tanks sometimes when you're running biopellets. And if you take your hand and just kind of go like this over the brown stuff, it floats up and you think it's going to leave and then it just settles back down on the sand again. That's mulm, M-U-L-M. And it is kind of annoying, but it will dissipate. Or if you change brands of biopellets. That's why I like biospheres. They don't create that. But yeah, it's a thing. And then having things that turn your sand over, like Nassarius snails and hermit crabs and cucumbers, they can help deal with the brown dust. Kevin says, how do you prevent your auto top-off from reacting to socks getting dirty or the roller mats getting dirty? Reacting? If your socks get clogged up, they overflow. If your fleece roller is getting clogged up, it advances to put a new piece of floss. But you're saying that that's affecting your top-off system? I know that some people say their skimmers react badly to like brand new filter socks, and they just kind of overflow. Or sometimes maybe fleece material can do that because of whatever's on the fleece, which technically there shouldn't be anything. But the top-off system shouldn't be triggered by it. The only reason the top-off system triggers on and off is because the water level's changing in the sump. So I would think your sock is clogged up and it's filling up with more and more water, so the water level is dropping in the sump, which makes the top-off turn on to get it back to its normal height. But eventually you're going to hit equilibrium because the sock's going to be so full it's overflowing, and your top-off is just at the right height. So I'm not really sure what you're saying, how it's reacting to socks or fleece. Pop Reef says, are you still planning on setting up the new anemone tank? Yes. The aquarium's in the back room. The clownfish anemones are waiting patiently for me to get off my butt and get them a new stand and canopy. I do need to do a little bit of painting on the kitchen cabinets where the tank will sit. So that way, because if I put the tank there now, I can't get that part painted. So I need to do that. Paint that, build stand, get the tank in place, hook it up. Hopefully do that soon. Mike says, use heaters with built-in thermostats. Well, yes, I agree with you there. He says it's still no problem with a monitoring system if the thermostat is out of the water. You're correct. That is true. But in my case, because I had my heater plugged into the hydros, I actually got a notification on there saying the heater's been running too long. It actually turned red. That's something I hadn't seen before because I'm not very familiar with hydros. It's a newer controller for me. But it did say that the tank temperature was wrong and the heater was running too long, and that was really neat. It was neat that it knew that. And I'm sure that has all to do with the settings, and it was great that I could make the correction and solve the problem. But yes, we want to adjust the heater to be just close enough to where the internal thermostat turns off. But if for some reason it doesn't turn off, we want the controller to then turn off the entire power to the heater so the heater can't run any longer. Ruben says, what are your thoughts on sponge growing on rocks and encrusting on SPS corals? Purple sponge, yellow and white. I have a spurt of sponge in my reef. Actually, I love sponge. I think it's great. And I have sponge all growing throughout my tank, usually on the underside of rockwork. If it starts getting into a coral that you're worried about, I would scrape it out of that coral. So if it's getting in your SPS, I would remove that. But if it's anywhere else and it's not doing any harm, I just find it to be a reef filter feeder. And I just kind of enjoy looking at its structure and its shape and what it's doing. And yeah, I don't remove it intentionally. I actually like it a lot. And then Bot says, I'm tired of using the refractometer. I have a small 6.5 gallon tank, so keeping the right salinity is very important. I bought the Milwaukee digital refractometer. Is that the most accurate tool for salinity? It's only as accurate as it is calibrated. But yeah, you should be able to use that. I have one of those. The green one is what I have. I think the new one is black. But the digital refractometer, you pour water into a little cup, and then it measures light through it. I used that for many, many years. I think the refractometer is faster than the other thing, but I do want to tell you this. If you have the kind that I think you're talking about, the desktop model that you set out, the disc, the metal disc that you're pouring the water into, it will be room temperature, whatever that temperature is. What I've always done when I turned it on is I put my palm on top of the metal ring and I waited for the temperature to measure on the device and say 78 degrees. Once it's at 78, then I put my water sample in there and I measured it. And I did that summer and winter. I did it every single time, and that way I'd have consistency of readings. But if the ring is colder, it's 65 degrees this time and it's 85 degrees that time, you're going to get different salinity readings because the ring is the wrong temperature. So I always warm it up with my palm before I take the water sample and put it in there. That's why I say the refractometer is quicker. You put 3 drops and you look at a bright light and you just see. But whatever you like, just as long as you're doing it regularly, I'm happy about that. Your medic says I have a 210-gallon tank and about 40 gallons in the sump, so about 250 gallons of total water. When talking about heaters, should all my heaters be in the exact same location of the sump, or should I spread them out? Well, first of all, let's talk about your total water volume. Your 210-gallon tank probably does not have 210 gallons of water in it. And I don't know if you measured it when you poured it in initially. Like my 400-gallon does not hold 400 gallons of water at all. And if you'll take inside measurements of your aquarium, you can say, from this end to that end, the inside measurement, my tank is 84 inches long, but the ends of the tank are 3/4 of an inch. So that's 82.5, right? And then my width is 36, but the front and back are 3/4 of an inch. So that puts me at 34.5. And then my water from the base of the tank, this tank is 30 inches tall total. But there's an inch of glass on the bottom. It's not even touching the bottom of the trim. So I have this much water, which is probably more like 24, 25 inches of water, not 30 inches of water. So I don't have 400 gallons in the glass box itself, and I doubt that your 210 has that. So normally when it comes to that, you do all your measurements yourself, or you can actually pump water out into buckets. You say 5 gallons, 10 gallons, 15, 20, whatever. And then you can say, okay, I went down this many inches. Then you can say this many inches is 20 gallons. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. See what I'm saying? You could kind of do that to kind of get an idea of what your water volume is. Or you can use math, and you can do it, which is length times width times height divided by 231. That gives you your gallons. And then if you have sand in there and you have rock, that displaced even more water. So normally I would say if you're trying to figure out water volume, whatever's in your sump is probably the equivalent of what was displaced in the display tank. So it might be safe to say you have 200 gallons total of total water volume. Now, back to your question about heaters. Well, we're going to need 600 watts of heat total for 200 gallons of water. 2 300-watt heaters would be great. 3 200-watt heaters would be great. They can be side by side. They can be vertical, if you like. Some people put them in the overflow boxes because they fit in there and they always stay wet. That is another option of where they can be. Mine are down in the sump between the baffles where the water has to go over the heaters to get to the next zone. And that way, every drop of water crosses right over my heaters. And it's been like that. They're all in a row next to each other. They don't cancel each other out. They don't do anything. They just heat the water the right amount to keep the tank temperature where it needs to be. And in the smaller tank, I just have a hang-on back heater. And it just cycles on and off. It just sits there in the corner hiding inside the bubbles. And that is my solution for both of those tanks. In the frag system, there's a heater, and it is in the sump between the baffles again, so the water has to flow over the heater to get to the next zone. And that's how I handle it. So you do not have to space them out from zone to zone, but you want them to be in the area with the most flow. Because if it's in an area where the water's more dead, more slow, then you're going to be superheating one area and getting some of the warm water. So like if they were in the refugium that has a slow flow zone, you only get some heat, not enough. And the rest of the system is cool because there's so much heat in the refugium. So it's better to have it where all the water's moving the most. Amanda says, I went with a PTC Helios 1,000-watt heater on my 200-gallon system. Seems like a lot. Crazy sticker shock, but 5-year guarantee feels like not replacing heaters every year makes it worth it. No, I could see that. as long as it doesn't cook your tank. Vroomy is here from Australia. Hello. Emmanuel says, I just noticed you have a coral beauty. How does he, I think it's a she, behave with corals? Any issues with nipping LPS corals? I see that fish go everywhere. I haven't seen any damage caused by it at all. I've been very happy about that. Coral beauties usually are okay. The flame angels, it's a 50-50 chance it'll work out. It could work, it could not. But coral beauties tend to be one you're going to be fine with. I've had mine probably 5 years. Kevin says, I was worried when socks get plugged up and the water level keeps changing, whether during use or when you change the socks out, won't the top off keep trying to accommodate and throw off salinity? Just depends where your socks are located and where your top off is. If you have a single sump, like you have an aquarium with no baffles, and the water pours in here and it's just water like this, and you got a return pump, then in that scenario, as the sock is filling up, yes, this water is going to go down. And then when you remove the sock, the water kind of equalizes up very rapidly. That's different. But if you have the sock in the skimmer zone, and then there's a baffle, and then the return zone is always at this level, it should be a much more gradual change. You shouldn't see a real issue with top off. Top off should just be what it always is. Now, my salinity just changed because of all the things I did in my tank last week. I had to acclimate the new fish to the system, and I had to steal water for safety stop. So I took out, and it's a 450-gallon system, and I stole like 5 or 10 gallons of water, and my salinity dropped a little bit accordingly because it was all fresh water being replaced. And so if you're removing a lot of salt water, you need to replace it with the amount of salt water again. Don't let top off just replenish it. So that's just a rule of thumb in a scenario where you're working with a tank. But with yours, I don't think your sock would really affect it if you have baffles in the sump separating the sock zone from the return zone. Rick says your drink is hot. I know. I've been talking too long. The glass, it worked really well, but not enough. It's definitely not ice cold. But fortunately, Shinerbach tastes great. It can handle a little bit of a temperature variance, where all the other stuff like Coors and Miller and Budweiser, it's got to be ice cold for a reason. All right, guys, I think we're going to stop there. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's live stream. It is Water Test Saturday. Please do test all your water parameters. You want to check alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, phosphate, potassium, temperature. You want to know everything. You want to make sure your protein skimmer isn't about to overflow and dump everything back into the system, especially now that the weather is changing. We just had a huge cold front blow through. If you're about to have storms, your protein skimmer could overflow tonight because of the barometric pressure changes. So make sure that you're cleaning your skimmer regularly, or have it going into a waste collector so it can't get back into the sump. That would be really smart. Your dosing, if you're doing any kind of dosing of any kind, no matter what dosing pump you use, if the tubes are clogged, nothing's coming out, it's not dosing anything. So you want to make sure that all those tubes are unclogged. You want to make sure your dosing containers have enough solution in them to continually dose some liquid. This week I had to make more magnesium because my jug had run dry, but I saw it and I did it. If you have containers that are empty, you're not dosing anything, even if the dosing pump is working. So we want to make sure not clogged, liquid in the doser. So that way your numbers stay steady and stable, and your corals will grow and your fish will be happy, and you'll have a beautiful reef to look at. And 12 months from now, you'll be showing me a video on your YouTube channel. Show me what a great job you did. Thanks so much, and I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I should see you again next Saturday.